being here. We'll get ourselves started with roll call with Janice and move on from there.
All right, Town of Ashland, Vice Chair Martin.
Here.
Mr. Root.
Here.
Charles City County, Mr. Walton. Chesterfield County, Mr. Plymale. Mr. Richwine. Mr. Ada. Ms. Phelan. Richland County, Mr. Basham.
Here.
Powhatan County, sorry about that. Oh, that one, Henrico County, Mr. Gordon.
Gordon Dixon here.
Thank you. Mr. Weeb. Chamber, New Kent County, Ms. Guthrie. Chamber RBA, Mr. Easter. League of Women Voters, Ms. Rosenblum. City of Richmond, Chair Bunn.
Here.
Ms. Erickson.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brackman. Mr. Smith.
Which
Richmond Area Cycling Association, Mr. Burnley. Mr. Hamilton. Richmond Equitable Transit and Mobility, Ms. Rowan. Mr. Moore.
Here.
Senior Connections, Mr. Williams.
Here, and it's the Span Center now.
Oh, I updated that on my membership list, but not my minutes, which is where I can see I'll do that
Sure
now.
that you did.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Janice.
Virginia Conservation Network, Ms. Higgins. Mr. Hankins.
Here.
NAACP, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Willis. Virginia Commonwealth University, Mr. Leonard. Mr. Cole. RVA Rapid Transit, Ms. Walker.
Here.
Ms. Power.
Here.
And Virginia's for High Speed Rail, Mr. Testerman.
Here.
I just want to make
He's here.
sure.
He just said it.
Okay. Started, I'm gonna have to do a look at my tally and just confirm that we have a quorum because we're on that this time.
All right, light attendance today, but it's winter, so as we were saying, understandable, we're all hibernating. So again, thank you for everybody who took the time to be here. Very happy to see you. We will move to approve the meeting minutes. They're in your packet. We'll need a motion to approve it.
So moved.
Second? Second. Great. All in favor, voice vote?
Yes,
All right, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed?
I can confirm that we do have a quorum, but due to that, Ms. Chu made the motion and second. Could you
Oh,
repeat it,
yes.
please?
Martin made a motion.
And
Who
who
seconded
seconded
that
to
motion?
approve?
Oh.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right. Are there any amendments to the agenda that anybody would propose? No. Seeing none, is there any public comment or any members of the public here to make a comment? I'm not seeing any in person, any online. No, all right. We'll move to the chair's report, and I have not prepared anything because things have been really crazy in my end at work. But we're coming out the other side, and we'll hear a good bit about that today, I believe. So with that, I think we can move to other business. And Martha, you were going to introduce our speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Holly and Mr. Bunn and I had a chance to have a conversation earlier this fall. November-ish timeframe, I'll say maybe, and just sort of talking a little bit about how the work with this group has been evolving and really making sure that we hold true to some of the things I think members of this committee appreciate. And so we were talking a little bit about how we've had a historic place on the agenda for guest speakers to be able to bring content to you all as, to be informed decision makers, but also informed leaders in your communities, and also to be able to help inform the work that you do as members of the CTAC. And so we thought that a nice nexus, frankly, for topic that is emerging at all levels of the transportation planning organization, but also a topic that's timely from a news perspective is safety. And so I'm really happy to thank Andy Bano for being here with us this midday for to be with us to talk us through a little bit about some of the issues that what do we mean when we say, I think, regional transportation safety from one person's perspective, but an expert in that space. And then Andy, after you are able to talk, I want to sort of put a little bit of grounding around where we know the TPO would like to see continued conversation and activity for safety, but we're really grateful for you to be here with us today and just kind of shed some light on this important topic.
Thanks for having me. Part of me likes that there's no microphone because it means I get to project big time. So I've got several slides that I'm going to talk through, but my thought was, since I know that I get long-winded especially on this topic, hearing that you guys had, I don't know the level of detail, but that you guys have been talking as a group perhaps about messaging around safety and communications with just general public outreach. I talked one-on-one with a couple of people about just how do you do public surveys? What works, what doesn't work? But I thought for today, what would be beneficial is if I give you a high level of how we're talking to people, and then I know it's set on the agenda 20 minutes, but hopefully that's because you guys are doing some talking and you cut me off. Richard here he's close, he can cut me off if you need, but so my role is, I'm in the city of Richmond in the Public Works Department. My role is in transportation engineering. It's very loose, but since Richmond is a Vision Zero city, you could say part of my job is to save lives. So that's what we're doing. I mean, Vision Zero, the whole idea is prevent severe crashes. So for you guys, whether it's every jurisdiction in the region is obviously different. So not everyone has the same pedestrian safety issues, for example. Not everyone has the same driver safety issues, or bicycle safety. So the modes are different. So rather than focusing on one particular mode at a time, I'm going to talk through how we're describing this both internally when we're talking with staff, engineer to engineer, or engineer to planner, which can be wildly different points of view, or just normies. If I'm talking with my sister or my elderly father, well, he's a bad example because he works in the transportation industry. But if you're talking with other people, how do you talk about traffic safety? How do you talk about public safety? So what Public Works has been doing, you could say is, even though it's an engineering group that's all about implementation, we're talking with the public about big ideas, and then our day-to-day work is implement those big ideas. So there we go. There's this next one. So just how we talk. So something as simple as saying no loss of life is acceptable. This sounds like such an ordinary statement to normal people, but among engineers, transportation professionals, this is like hang on a second, no loss of life, or I don't know about the word acceptable. We need to vet the word acceptable and see, well, this division doesn't like the word acceptable, or this one doesn't like no loss of life. Like, what about a modest reduction in loss of life? There's this whole thing that we in the engineering profession tend to do is just overanalyze everything, and you miss the big picture. The big picture is, if there are a bunch of crashes happening that send people to the hospital or to the morgue, like life-altering crashes, we say that's not acceptable. We don't want that. So that's our starting point as a Vision Zero city. We know that these severe crashes are preventable, so we want to prevent them. So then with that said, rather than having a focus on, well, what does the latest manual of uniform traffic control devices say on such and such? I mean, yeah, that's an important document for us. Or what does the AASHTO guideline for such and such say? These things have a role in the engineering world, but when we're trying to describe to people what Vision Zero is, as an example, or just transportation safety, we want to focus on culture. So wherever people happen to be, so if the people are spending a lot of time coming to technical meetings, fine, we'll meet them there. If it's school, Safe Routes to School exists for that. People like Tara Fitzpatrick and other parents who are involved in schools can do work in these areas, but we want to focus on culture because we want to change our culture to get rid of these crashes. So let's see, I won't go down that. I wrote myself a tangent, but I don't want to go down that tangent. This, I don't usually put so many words on slides, but I knew we'd have some folks online. So I thought it was worth it. This is another thing that we engineers don't usually get into because it's not found in engineering manuals or even planning documents. But the human body is fragile. I'm old enough that now I look at my two younger boys to be that strong again. So I'm constantly going back and forth in this mental space about I'm not that old, and then I walk funny off of a curb and I'm like, I am that old. Like the body is fragile. And so we know that people make mistakes. I'm busy gabbing at somebody on the sidewalk and I miss the curb, I hit the ice wrong, whatever. So we know stuff's gonna happen. We know that when you introduce motor vehicles into the mix, that there's gonna be more severe issues. So that's what these 3 bullets are about. We've gotta have layers of protection. It can't just be, well, we're in shoes tied, like maybe he was wearing Velcro and the Velcro was loose, whatever. We need safe road design, we need safe vehicle design, and then we need safe vehicle operation. So, you know, what you're doing behind the wheel. So these are layers that help protect you, whether you walk in, you're riding a bike, you're driving, these 3 kinds of things are happening. So we talk about, if you guys have been to any of the speed symposiums that Public Works Department has put on, you've seen this and other similar. Oh, look at my exponent, I'm sorry. That's way up high. That's supposed to be speed squared. It's my bad on the formatting. But we talk about the ladder as a way of illustrating physics. I mean, ironically enough, physics, it nearly killed me at Virginia Tech when I was studying civil engineering, but I have to talk about it now because it explains why our frail bodies get so banged up in crashes. So we talk about crash energy, kinetic energy, and we throw this formula up to get people to realize 1/2 times mass times speed squared. That speed squared means that with incremental increases in speed, that crash energy just soars. So a ladder is a great illustration of this because if the human body is on the tippy top of a ladder, you teeter, you fall off of a normal ladder, that impact is like a 15-mile-an-hour impact. It hurts. You're gonna walk away from it, but you don't get up there. Like if Sarah's painting and I'm helping her, I'm not gonna be like reckless around the ladder. I'm gonna be careful. She's gonna be careful. So we know that hurts. But for some reason, we get in a car, we're driving, like 15 feels like nothing, right? But if you hit somebody, the body, even if you're inside the car, if you're not wearing a seatbelt, your body gets banged around at 15 miles an hour, you're gonna know it. One ordinary way that this happens, that I've told people about, I mean, fitting in the wintertime, an unbelted sledding incident that I was part of in the 80s, where, you know, Gen Xers, we do things that I guess you're not supposed to do anymore, but tethering together slides with chains and ropes so that you could have like a train of sleds going down, rather than just boring one sled at a time. So we organized little person in the front up to the bigger. So my sister and I and another couple of kids that we always played with, we did this chain of sleds and I'm in the back. We hit something, first sled stops. I'm in the back, I go forward, probably about 15 miles an hour, land on Allison's arm, nap. And like she walked away from it, we all walked away from it, she was crying more than the rest of us, but Like that was a 15-mile-an-hour crash energy. And I think that's just sledding, that's just ordinary life.
So was the mass of every single,
I wasn't doing
sled?
math at the time, if that's what you're asking.
I'm just trying to relate it to your,
Back up here on the ladder, so if
To your
if you're
formula.
on a ladder and you fall down, it's about a 15-mile-an-hour impact is the equivalent. So that same kind of thing I experienced as a kid in a sled hurling forward and hitting something. So, and that's just, again, 15-ish miles an hour. We've been talking more about this vertical kind of stuff, connecting the dots between or equating sort of horizontal issues like speed with something vertical that we can picture. It gets tricky to do sometimes, it's not always precise, like the roof of a building, depending on how high that building might be, a 40-mile-an-hour fall, but it helps people picture, like I can see the roof over there, I can imagine what it would be like to stand on the edge looking down. I want to be really careful because I don't want to fall, knowing you'll live, but then we don't have that same kind of caution when we're behind the wheel. And there's a whole bunch of pedestrians around, people are walking, there's kids at school, they're crossing the street during, drop off time or whatever. And we're not thinking that kind of caution. And yet you and I walk to the edge of a roof and we're like, we gotta be extra careful around here. So this is another thing that gets around to our messaging, and you might notice the subtlety that there's drivers are involved in this. Like I'm referencing people walking on the sidewalk, but the source of danger is not the most vulnerable person. So this is actually a little sing-songy, slow down, stop at red lights, put your phone down, slow down. So yeah, I don't know if you guys are gonna be making commercials, but you can take these lyrics if you want, you don't have to. But at the city of Richmond, we're not bashful about this. We're not bashful about talking about the primary source of danger out on streets. And again, this is urban streets, this is rural streets, like wherever. The primary source of danger are the people operating the heavy vehicles that are capable of doing so much damage. And it's so easy for any 16-year-old to just press on that gas and get up to 80 miles an hour in a 2-3 ton machine. So when we're communicating with people about safety, it's these kinds of things that have to do with your behavior when you're behind that vehicle. This is, think back to the ladder, but this is more of an engineering kind of approach to it. The graph showing speed versus probability of death. And the takeaway here, again, in that physics formula, speed is squared. So the probability of death is jumping. So like 30 to 40 miles an hour, your chance of death about doubles. And then 40 to 50 doubles again. And 50 to 60 on that curve doubles again. And you're driving, that feels like such incremental differences. It doesn't feel like much to just press the gas a little bit more, you get a little bit further out Broad Street or a little bit further down the Lothian Turnpike. What's the difference between 40 and 50? That on the chart, that's the difference between 40 and 50. Here's the other one that I'm still coming to terms with. The probability of death jumps as we get older and older. But again, just a reminder, this is the kind of thing that we're sharing with folks about safety. None of this has to do with a design manual yet. This doesn't have to do with lane width in particular. It doesn't have to do with the engineering techniques for improving safety. But this is the stuff that everywhere USA, and if we're gonna change culture here in Richmond, like wherever people are from, wherever they're moving to, this is the kind of stuff that ordinary people need to understand. So speed management, this is yet another harping on the same thing, just looking at it differently. Tabular format. Your impact versus survival. So again, I wrote impact because this is not just like if you get in a crash, then visualizing the damage of crash. Even if you're inside the car and you don't, like you're not the person walking across the street, let's say you're the one that does the hitting. If you are in in a crash where the impact on your body is 23 miles an hour, you're gonna survive, but there's still, I mean, remember, there's still impact on you. Everybody's getting banged up here. But on the outside, if a person walking across the street gets hit at 23 miles an hour, almost guaranteed to survive. You jump to 58 miles an hour, somebody gets hit at that speed, almost guaranteed to die. So this is not to say, you know, like I said at the beginning, every jurisdiction is gonna be different. It's not to say that every single street you should expect the same type of motor vehicle traffic. But that kind of thing, if people realize the dramatic increase in probability of death as speed increases, that's just a steady reminder that this is so critical. So here in the city of Richmond, we don't have urban highways, even though sometimes you'll hear a story about somebody driving a motorcycle, you know, 80 miles an hour down a skinny street. But we're doing everything we can to reduce crash energy, which means reduce travel speeds. I didn't have a watch up here. How far behind am I on time? Should I speed it up? I'll speed it up. I can see that expression. So on the,
You're like 15 minutes, so you're.
okay,
Keep going.
on the left-hand side, I'm not gonna go through all these in particular, but these are on the left-hand side and then a few on the top right. What I would say are pretty common engineering types of ways of reducing speed. And then on the right, speed cameras, red light cameras, crossing guards, those are more outside of a public works department, but things that are going on. Parking and zoning reform, I'll just briefly on those. I'd mention these in here because they, even though you don't see it, it absolutely has to do with speed reduction, and that you're talking about things like getting rid of requirements for a certain amount of parking, getting rid of requirements for things that lead to or continue a car dependent lifestyle. So if we're trying to help people, like picture Manchester all around us here, where somebody already owns 2 cars, what if they had enough options and local government wasn't requiring developers to assume everybody's gonna drive all the time? If we're going from helping people to nudge down to car light lifestyle, like maybe instead of 3 cars, they have 2, or instead of 2 cars, they can get away with 1. That impacts their overall behavior. Zoning reform, you know, things like legalizing a mixed use walkable neighborhood. That encourages more people to opt out of driving. So these things they're not the direct slow down the driver kind of thing, but they are related, so I include them. And then marketing reform, again, if you guys are talking about safety campaigns, whether regionally or focused jurisdiction by jurisdiction, but this is a huge opportunity because nationally, I mean, if you see during Pedestrian Safety Month, you'll see some clever campaigns and some like sticky ideas, but generally speaking, it's engineering talk that just gets a cute logo on it. And so it's like the same jargony stuff. It might be technically accurate, but it's not doing anything. It's just the same words, just with a new logo, a new fiscal year with, you know, maybe a different marketing firm helped out. So the way that we're looking at things like how I would say marketing reform would be is how we talk about these things. So a Vision Zero example would be if the primary threat to vulnerable road users is the people behind the wheel, then make your messaging towards the people behind the wheel. Like, don't sidestep that. You know, however you want, you can take it from there and come and have marketing agencies or creatives help with, okay, how do I message? If it's young men, I don't remember all the dumb things I did, thankfully, but many dumb things behind the wheel. Like that's what we young men do. Like any psychologist will say, yeah, this is true. Your brain's not done forming until early 20s, and yet you've been driving for almost 10 years doing the stupidest things behind the wheel. So I will need a marketing firm perhaps or creatives to help me message to those people, but I shouldn't be bashful about identifying in certain groups, like these are the people I'm trying to reach, these are the people I'm trying to message. So the type of person that you're trying to reach is going to vary by context, but in a Vision Zero example, it's not about just saying, just ending with things like, we had 40,000 fatalities in the United States last year. Let's make it 0. That's true, But also very specifically, how are you gonna make it zero? Well, you gotta slow down people behind the wheel. And then just get more and more specific about the source of danger. An example for marketing reform on something like transit, we want people to be able to have options, right? Viable options. We want, if there's an exception to where I want things fast, it's I want fast bicycling and I want fast transit. Like if I'm waiting for the bus, I came out here on the bus stop, but I knew if I get out here at this particular time, that bus will come, it's predictable, it's reliable, I'll be able to get on it, get off right here. I don't wanna be stuck in traffic. And so things like describing to people the bus as an express sidewalk. Like I could have walked here, Richmond's got great walkable bones. There's some pinch points here and there, but I could have walked. And then you figure, okay, well, maybe I'm walking, here comes this bus. I can just get on this express sidewalk, it carries me a whole bunch of blocks faster and gets off. So I don't have to get into the weeds with people about how transit operates or, what exactly the schedule is. If I just start with people saying, what is transit? Well, it's like the sidewalk, but it's an express sidewalk. So it's just an example of how you can be changing the conversation around how we get around through space, which naturally will lead towards safety. And I want to end with something you may have seen this, how many I had on this, but you may have seen this in either in social media posts or just it's been covered I think in the Atlantic, but it's covered in a handful of magazines. But mental health, social issues are such a big deal. Public Works can't solve all the things going on that are leading to some of the worst crashes. We've experienced some of these in the city of Richmond, but this is also happening across the country. Engineering, education, and then even enforcement only get you so far. So there are ways that we can address this issue, but car brain, I don't know if you've heard of this, or motonormativity is another word. If you Google this, you'll find a Wikipedia page. This started with some researchers in the UK, and then now there's some universities in the US that have been looking into this to do this, like replicate the same kind of study. But car brain is performing or justifying antisocial behavior just because a car is involved. So this is not to disparage car owners. This is not about ownership. This is the kind of thing like, if I'm standing next to Stephanie and I'm smoking, okay, we're back in the 80s, we're not now. It's rude. I'm not gonna just blow smoke in her face. That's antisocial behavior. But if I'm sitting on a car or in my car and she's right there on the sidewalk next to my parked car and I'm just idling, I don't think twice about idling, even though all those fumes are coming out of the tailpipe right into Stephanie. There's other things like when you're walking through a grocery store, you're not gonna jump in front of somebody else, you're not gonna shove somebody else. But and you may have seen some videos online about this kind of thing, like people recreating just walking around, acting like if I was a driver, how would I be? And like right up in someone else's space, right up in somebody else's space. There is a lot of this kind of behavior that when you see it, I mean, it's been mocked in movies for decades. Office Space, there's a famous opening scene in that movie where the guy's just crawling through traffic and he sees an elderly guy with a walker that keeps passing him. And he's so frustrated sitting in traffic. We know there's something that happens, and who cares how it happens or why it happens. But when you're in a car operating it for too long, you do things that in ordinary life outside of a car, you just wouldn't do. You do rude things to people inside of that protective shell, that socially protective shell. And so this list of things, there are a whole bunch of very common city things that people will do. Fortunately, we don't have the kind of gridlock that New York City has with blocking the box, but that kind of mentality. Things like parking in the bus lane. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen that on Broad Street. I've been in those buses where we're sitting there waiting, then the bus has to peel out and go around because somebody's just sitting there with their flashers on, because if you put your flashers on, you can do whatever you want. But parking in the bus lane. So New York City, just one example of this issue. some of us suffer more than others. I mean, I don't know if you're like, I'll say for myself and not be a mind reader, but I know I have to be so aware of speed and how I'm interacting with other people. I use cruise control. The older I get, I use cruise control so much more to keep my brain on, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm not speeding, I'm not speeding, I'm not speeding. But there's a small percentage of people who do the worst damage. And this is, again, something that engineering and enforcement, I mean, enforcement is a big part of this, but engineering and education, it only gets you so far, but it's important to know about and talk about, because this is one of those things that you take back to your neighborhood, take back to church, you take back to when you're just in your own social groups to talk with people about. New York City found that in 2023, they have, these numbers are a little bit bonkers, but of the people who got 25 or more automatic speed tickets in a year, just 25 or more in a single year, which happened to be 7,500 drivers in New York City. But of the drivers that got 25 or more in a single year, they found that those drivers were 15 times more likely to be in a severe crash. Somebody gets to the hospital or someone's killed. So that's this tiny percentage overall of all New York City drivers doing this incredible damage. But if somebody's got to be talking about that. So in our case, we're a public works department. We know these stats. We have to be able to identify those kinds of things. Our PD is the starting point of it with enforcement, but we have to be able to identify this stuff and then relay it to other people. So engineers aren't going to be the start and finish of all those kinds of conversations, but it's important to understand that sort of thing. So I'll wrap on that, because I don't want to take all of the, I mean, I do want to take all of the next presentation time, but questions, comments? Yes.
I use Sims Avenue a lot. And I've noticed the signs on Sims.
The speed signs?
Yes. I think they just say, please slow down or something. It's a very succinct phrase that is not overly analytical. So at the age where I am now, when I see that sign, I don't fight it mentally. Like, I do take my foot off the gas, and I think, and from my experience of witnessing the other drivers' behavior when I'm going down Sims, some people just, they drive as though they're completely someplace else because it's a straight stretch of road, but the lanes are narrow. And you see people that are like kind of weaving through, you know,
social media
trying to get around all the people that are obeying the speed limit.
Yeah.
So you've got the people, so that's a struggle between the people that are compliant, the people that are like, I have a meeting, you know, I'm gonna get there. So, but my comment is that I'm hoping and I'm wondering and hoping that those signs are helping, because I have noticed that people are a little more cautious. Like, in what time frame? Oh, I would say the last 6 months. So I see that as like, that's just one person's opinion, but I do see that as useful. That has made me aware that I need to just think, I'm not in a hurry every time I get behind the wheel of a car. And yet there's a part of my brain that always thinks I'm in a hurry. And that part of the brain might, you know, substantially influence the way I operate the car I'm driving. So just the thing about, look, take a breath and where are you and all that. And I think a sign like that, obviously it speaks to some people because it spoke to me. Am I aware that other people are going to ignore it? Well, of course, it's the world. But I mean, what do you do? Because some people ignore the sign, don't put the sign up? I mean, I don't think so. It's changed my behavior. I'm really trying to be aware, because I know that I've read about people being killed, pedestrians trying to cross that street. It's just ridiculous. It's not a highway.
Right. And that's all the things, like in a Vision Zero mindset, you've got engineering, education, enforcement, all these kinds of things. It's not one or the other, it's all the things. It wasn't long ago when you saw on Main and Cary Street, all the small signs that were in the center that said something to the effect of state law, stop for pedestrians and crosswalks. And there were two interesting stories that were popping up in social media, and then the press picked up on some of these, where on the one hand you had, and this was the lesser group, I can't believe the city would waste a bunch of money on these stupid signs, can you believe this? I mean, never mind that it was a grant for this particular thing, but whatever. There was a small group that was the point of view. But what caught on by more, thankfully, was people going, can you believe people are driving over all these signs? Like, if the faster you drive, the more leeway you have, that's why highway lanes are so wide. I guess so that we can drive with our knees, but you have more, engineers say forgiving, it's a forgiving lane. So people were very forgiving as they drove down Main and Cary, like whoops, bonk, hit a sign. And so the conversation around those signs became, can you believe how careless we drivers are that we're knocking all these signs out, like they can't stay up for 48 hours because what are we doing? We're in a hurry, we acting like we're on the highway, we're on Main Street, we're in Carytown. It's interesting to pick up those kinds of stories and get them in the press and have people talking about behavior behind the wheel, because again, that's the danger to everybody, whatever mode you're getting around. It's whether it's car versus car crashes or car versus people walking. We've got to calm down behavior behind the wheel. That's the key for culture change.
Okay, I don't think we have time for more questions now. I think we're gonna move on through, but of course, Andy, are you planning on sticking through the rest of the meeting? Or
Not the entire meeting, but I'll be
Okay.
here as long as I can.
Sure. Well, thank you very,
Thanks
very
for
much for
having
your
me.
presentation. It was really great to hear that from you. As somebody who biked here and almost got hit by people ignoring a flashing beacon, thanks to everybody who does slow down when you see slow down signs or pedestrian signs or something. On behalf of all the other people trying to bike here. Okay, so we are gonna
Sorry,
move on. Oh, yes, of
can I
course.
just- Yeah, I think what we wanted to do today was understand whether this is a topic that the CTAC has interest in. Because if you are a person who, for whatever reason, happened to be able to tune into Tuesday's TAC meeting, the revamping of the Regional Vision Zero work group was a topic of conversation, and it will be included on the, February TAC meeting agenda to discuss further. There's also ongoing conversations at the policy board level. We're embarking on the season where we establish our regional safety targets. The policy board in 2024 took a very firm stance, somewhat, Andy, in line with the opening of your presentation around no loss of life is acceptable. In my tenure, the policy board took a firm stance for the first time that said, we're not gonna go with the state's incremental increase, that the number of crashes will be expected to increase year over year. We need to see that number plateau. So they didn't go so far as to say zero, but they did say we've got to see no growth here. And so there's been kind of an ongoing conversation about what do we need to do with our built environment and the way that we plan and we invest in our transportation infrastructure, but also what do we need to do around education and awareness and change of behavior. And so the question for the CTAC today is to know a little bit of a sense of whether or not this is a topic the CTAC would like to be involved with, from developing that education and awareness, kind of campaign and toolkit to be able to think about how we could bring resources to our jurisdictions to deploy across the region, depending on the particular safety challenges that exist community to community.
Can I comment on that?
No, absolutely, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should. Reason being, there are 8 bills right now that are going before the General Assembly in regards to pedestrian safety. I don't have the capacity right now to focus that on my organization, but I think it's important. And I know there's a speed camera bill with $100 that's on the floor right now. And I think it's important for us to know what those bills are and how we can support it if this is a mission for because pedestrian safety is important on all aspects of multimodal transportation, so I think so, yes.
Even taking a step back, I think it would be good in preparation of next year's General Assembly to see if there's certain bills we want to be paying attention to as they go through. I don't know if we can take stances on things, but like that was very cool to hear about that. At least us at Partnership for Smarter Growth would like to be attuned to. So
Real quick, does anybody happen to know if this is a short session or a long session?
Short.
This is short? Okay, cool. Just for context. Yes, it is.
It was a short session, and I was there yesterday, but I think I agree with what Faith is really saying. And one thing I appreciated about your presentation, as we look at faith communities, how can we encourage them to have the conversation about covering? And so framing that for me was really helpful.
Any other feelings about investigating safety as a topic a bit more? Seems generally positive. I will say it as well from my perspective, safety is one of those topics where if you really dive into it, it's a lot like accessibility, where you're designing things for the most vulnerable users, and therefore it acts as a proxy topic for a lot of other really important things like equity and similar topics. So I love safety and I'm very passionate about it myself.
So would it be fair for us to take this feedback and energy and think about how to incorporate conversations into the next couple of CTAC meeting agendas?
I think so, that's what I'm hearing.
I mean, candidly, I think that there's a high potential that there's a directive coming for, at least at the staff level, and if not with you, to think about building either in partnership with the city, because you all have been at this Vision Zero effort for a while now, or aligned with, to be able to build kind of this education awareness campaign material. And so I think in addition to just tracking the data, we want to get a little bit more involved in what it would mean to look like, what it would look like to be able to try to influence behavior. So.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. I'd also love if it's possible to hear an update on the bills that Faith mentioned next time we meet. I don't know if that's something you can put together or I could look into.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm thinking about, I think the next meeting date is March 20th, so it'll be too late by that point to have kind of the advocacy perspective, but as Faith said, I think we could probably work to sort of identify quickly what bills are active, so we could digitally, electronically track that kind of thing between now and then. Plan our VA just so that everyone is aware, and then in addition to that, TPO, we're not authorized to do legislative advocacy. We are not a 501c4. That's not our mission or purpose. Our local governments, however, though, many of them have legislative platforms. And so there is a conversation around monitoring legislation and understanding the implications of policy. We just ourselves are not up that way, walking the halls and doing that advocacy. But I think it's always a role that we strive to play, to be able to share information. So we could, I think I and my colleagues can look and see what the nature of the legislation looks like this year. And then also certainly in out of session time, an opportunity would be to think about what kinds of recommendations around policy development for next session, as Richard said, could be a possibility. So it's just more of an arm's length role that we would play.
John Easter historically has been very effective in making presentations from time to time at this board about legislation that pertain to transportation. And I know Lisa Guthrie stays very much up on that. But in regards to transportation issues and the presentation, speed and distraction seem to be the two most likely reasons for fatal crashes or crashes. And it seems like we're going the opposite direction of maintaining speed, where all the highways you always seeing the speed increasing and never decreasing. You did comment, or the comment was made about the automated speed tickets in New York City. And I was just in New York City and I don't know in all that traffic how you can go more than 5 miles an hour. But anyhow, coming down from Ashland, you know, on the highways, you have to go 85 miles an hour and stay in traffic. And I'd like to know more about, this panel could take an advocacy position in regards to automated speed limit, or speeding, technology. Education for those people, I think everybody knows when they're speeding. I think everybody knows when they're distracted. But we just aren't doing a very effective job of policing that, but there just aren't enough police to do that. So I think that the taking advantage of automated ways of identifying that is the way to go.
We can look into that and sort of get a lay of the land of what tools are currently deployed. And I mean, I think Faith, this gets a little bit back to your point. I mean, the legislation around speed cameras is a piece of the puzzle. What are we authorized to do from an enforcement perspective versus not? So I think we've got a couple of ideas about what we can bring back to on that and other comment notes. Is that, am I relaying what I think I'm hearing?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Great. Holly, are you ready
Yes.
to share with us?
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. And thank you everybody for the conversation on that. It's always great to hear like from the room, what people are thinking about.
Okay, so I wanted to give everyone an update about what we have and where we've been moving around community engagement for the long range transportation plan. And then I have some asks of you of how you might help us do that. So I wanted to demo a couple of things for you, and folks online should be able to see this too. This is our engagement platform that we've been talking about for a long time. And we got a long time, half a year, that we used as a demo for the rural public transportation plan. So you saw it a little bit then, but right now, if you go to engage.planrva.org, right on the main page is an open project that links to the LRTP. And so if you do /LRTP, this is our engagement platform for all of the ways that we're going to collect public input, get people to follow the project, share about public events, and have a toolkit for people to download images and copy and text that you can share with your own networks. So everything is here in this one-stop shop. I want to give a huge shout out to Kristen in the back, our engagement coordinator, who did the lion's share of the design of the toolkit items here. The rest of the pieces of the page was very much a collaborative effort between our transportation team and our team. So thank you to all the staff who helped make this happen. But I wanted to show you a couple of things that are here, which is we have a simple survey here that is capturing some basic information about transportation, because at this level, we're just trying to get kind of a high level input from the public about what's important to them and what are their needs. But it also has some demographic questions here, which can be challenging to collect for all the reasons that it is, but it is important because we have federal mandates that say we have to make sure that we are capturing the diversity of our region. It's also important to us to ensure that those voices are heard. So we have some questions here that capture that. We have a big old write-in question here if there's something kind of broad that people want to tell us about, as well as some questions about how might we ensure that we're reaching you, and what's one thing you change about the transportation system. So this one is very open-ended, but where you can kind of get into the meat of things is our issue map. And so this mimics what we did at some of the events that we've had in the past that many of you attended, our transportation forum, where we had that big map and said, where are the issues and what do you like? And so that's what this map is doing. It's multimodal. And so the idea is that you can put in an address. So if it's your workplace, you could put in 424 Hull Street, Richmond, Virginia, and it will zoom in on the map. And you could say, hey, I have an issue right outside of our office, and you can click add issue and put it on the map. And it's going to say, what kind of category is this issue related to? Because we want folks to think about the ways that all these things interconnect. So is it a safety issue? Is it a design issue? And if you're like, hey, I don't know what those mean. Well, there's a little I button right here that has the definitions of what all those terms are. And there's instructions up top that say that. So it just lets people know a little bit more about what those things mean. And so I'm going to say, hey, I have an issue right here. It's about safety. What kind of transportation issue is it? Well, it's about bicycling. Be like, our board chair was almost hit by a car on the way to work, so whatever it is that you want to put in there. And you can say you're not a robot and hit submit, and then it'll show up on the map right there. And you can also upvote other people's mentions. So if there's something there that you really like, or you're like, hey, yeah, I also have that issue, you can click on it and say, yes, I want to say more about it. Brook Road bike lanes, lack safe connections. Do I like that? Yes. And so it's giving a little bit of a social element, but it's also letting people plot issues.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just thinking about what you shared about Sims Avenue,
Mhm.
is it designed for people to write and say, I drive on Sims Avenue and I'm really glad that you have that sign up there?
Yeah, you can put positive things too. Yeah, so I think there was one that was like the pulse stop here is really convenient because, and so they plotted the pulse. And obviously if it's all of Sims Avenue, just pick a place, we can extrapolate that data, but positive input is good too. At the transportation forum, many of you put in positive things because I think it's helpful to say we want more of this thing. You can also zoom in on a location, so it'll just zoom you right into the town of Ashland there. You
Yes,
can
do that.
zoom into
Up
all
by my
Hanover
house.
County. Not enough issues in Ashland. Well, there's some, okay, yeah. So that's an easy way to do that. It's a little bit, I think, friendlier on a computer or a tablet than it might be on a phone if you're not super good at that. But I think on a phone, there's also the way to zoom, and we have tested this for both. And then we have some overview and FAQs about the project, but the other thing I want to show you is this toolkit. So this is what you all as CTAC members can take right now and share with the world. So we're going to get to what you're going to do in that in a minute, but there are flyers you can download in English and in Spanish. There are images. There are images for every social media platform that we have. There's some sample text. If you want to just copy and paste that and send an email to all your friends, you could do that. And then there's also a picture here about how to translate the page, because this whole page is translatable in the 10 languages that are most common in our region.
Wow.
So in addition to just already us prepping some Spanish materials, because we know that's an audience we have a relationship with, and there's a high concentration, this is a way to automatically translate this whole page into these 10 languages. So that's something also we'd love your help with letting people know.
This is fantastic technology. And needs to be as proactively shared as possible to get as many people to use it.
Yeah.
But the other side of the coin is, where does it go, who sees it, and how is it being used?
Yep, we're gonna talk about that in just one second. Hold that
Oh,
thought.
I knew that.
This is also where you can see where the public events are. So anything that we have been invited to or we created, you have a flyer that you should have picked up out front about the town hall we're doing with the deaf and hard of hearing community with the Virginia Department of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. It's very exciting. That's our February event. They will have interpreters there. So we're trying to both invite people to things that are already happening, but also let them know, hey, if this audience is important to you or you are a part of this, please come to the things we're already doing. So we'll be adding more things there all the time. There's also a way to ask questions. Or contact us directly. And you can also follow the project. So that's something I would encourage all of you to do, is to follow this, because then you can get updates as it's happening. It also lets us know that people are looking, and it's an easy way for us to communicate that. So you could share that with your folks. To your question, Upton, how are we getting this out? We have a whole campaign of how we're trickling this out to the public, right? So it starts with, what are the channels we control? How do we communicate with the press? How do we talk to our partners? You heard the last time we were here, we had that list of dedicated groups that we said, let's talk to the stakeholder groups first and let's invite them. So all of that group, I think there's 75 different organizations. They all got this first in December. We sent an invitation to them, and we're doing follow-up to those community groups. Right now, we're starting what I'm going to call the beginning of the public launch, which is how do we get this word out to the rest of the public now? And this period of engagement is from now until, I'll say, April, May. So we have a good chunk of time. We are just now starting to roll out the public version of this. So we haven't really communicated hard with any of the press outlets. The water issue in the city slowed that down a little. So we said, let's make sure we have water until we start talking to people about 25 years from now. But where I would like your help, CTAC, is I'd like you to think back to whatever meeting you were at, where you did that who's in our community exercise, where we asked you to identify where are the groups that you're already connected to, where are the places where people congregate, where are your people in your regions, right? Either in your county or in your work and play. I would love if you would take the next minute and write down where are two places that you will plan to share this with when you leave here? Where are two places that you're already connected to that you would really like to share this with? Take 2 minutes just to think, take 1 minute to think about that and write it down, including the people online. Think about your who's in our community list. Who do you know that's special to where you are, special to New Kent, special to Ashland, special to the places you live and work and play? And then I'm gonna ask you to come back with that info in a second.
You can't do that. You can do the Kiwanis, whatever.
And I'll give you a hint, I have the who's in our community notes. That Andrew actually helped type up initially. And so if you're like, gosh, I can't think of anything right now, well. Lisa in New Kent was like, hey, there's a New Kent chamber. That's a good point. We forgot there's a New Kent chamber. That might be a good place to go to. Or Gordon said, hey, Chesterfield supervisors hold some monthly meetings. Or there's a Metropolitan Business League. Maybe Don Easter was like, hey, the Metropolitan Business League. They were on our list of organizations we reached out to last fall. But if you've got a human connection to any of these places, that is already a win. So I have another piece of information for you. Something you had asked for us from before was, hey, well, how do I speak intelligently about this? So we made you a script. And so this script is, hey, here's a little bit about how you can talk about the LRTP. Because what I'd love for us to identify today is the places that you wrote down. Tell us where you'd like to go. And you can tell me that in person at the end of our meeting today. You can send me an email about it, but we'd love to track that because I'd love to know if Dawn's like, I'm gonna go to my neighborhood association meeting because I'm the board chair. And I would love to bring this Engage website and talk about it. Let us know that you're doing that.
Sarah's going to the.
Ooh, all right. People in the chat, excellent, yay, thank you. And you've got some talking points. Now, if you're online, where you can find this script is on the committee page for CTAC, where your agenda was, we've just uploaded it, so the script is there that you can actually go to and download. If you're online, you put it in the chat, thank you, Sid, so it's in the chat for you as well, if you wanna download this and copy and paste it for later. You don't have to use all of this, but this is just a way to give you a chance to have some framing about it. But really, everything you need is on this engagement page. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah,
It's really nice to see.
excellent. Okay, so by the end of the meeting.
Sometimes that's a time consuming part about sharing something like that is figuring out how to.
Yeah.
Cause you're trying to get them to do it, right? And so that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so by the end of the meeting, have that rolling around your head. Think about if there's two places you'd like to go. If you'd like to share that, that would be really helpful. If you're not sure and you just want to email me after and let me know, hey, like, I'd really like to go do this, let us know so we can track that. That would help. I do have one specific invite for you, which is the Powhatan Board of Supervisors. So we don't have anybody here who represents Powhatan, but you all are highly positioned to be a good representative to help us show up to that meeting. I would love to know if right now there's anybody who could go to the Powhatan Board of Supervisors meeting. We have our choice of February or March 24th. The Brett from Powhatan has already offered to give us a time slot to be at that. It's from 6 to 9. We don't have to be there the whole time. I don't know exactly which time frame that would apply to where that is, but I would love to ask if there's somebody here today who would feel comfortable doing that.
And I'll go with you.
Ooh.
I mean, you don't have to drive with me, but I'll.
Yeah.
What are the dates you said?
February or March 24th from 6 to 9 PM. And it would not be that whole time. I imagine it's in the beginning like ours is, but we could get clarification on that.
You're during public comment.
Yeah.
I can go on the 24th of February.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Sarah.
I can go to that time.
Okay, Martha's free too. All right, we'll lock it down. Thank you. And this is where I don't want you all to be shy, is if you have ideas and you're like, ooh, now that you're thinking about it and you have tools, you're like, Holly, can I volunteer to go to this thing? Yes, the answer is yes, right? Because you are helping us spread the word. As staff, we could not get to all the places we want to get to. You're helping us do that.
Can we carpool though?
Carpool, yes. Love
Thank you.
it. Thank you, Sarah.
I was gonna say, if you can build a shared use path between here and Palatine.
That sidewalk bus that
I'll
we,
go,
that
yeah.
that Andy talked about, yeah. And I just want to note one thing about kind of where this data collection is going. When the transportation team is looking at all the needs that are here, if something isn't really relevant to the long range plan, right, it's maybe not a regional project, it's maybe not something that is eligible for that kind of funding, we are sharing all of this data with the localities. So the localities are getting a chance to hear it too. And we're also looking at the locality comprehensive plans, right? So when we are putting together this big plan, we are looking at all of that. So we want to tell the public, hey, you might have told your locality that you cared about this. The more that we can have a consistent message of the things you care about, the more those messages get amplified. So even though it might feel like, well, I told Chesterfield that already, this is a chance to ensure that we can say, well, look at how many people in Chesterfield said. And you know who also cares about this? Henrico and New Kent, right? So it's kind of that aggregate voice that gives it a little bit more power. I'm just looking at my notes here. I want to ask Kristen to just give us one other suggestion about how we can amplify this message. Upton, to your point about how we're sharing this. Kristen, you want to tell us about social media followers? Yeah.
Where I'm like
Yeah,
visible.
just come to the table and the camera will get you.
Ahead.
Yeah.
I just to let you know, these were outside and I didn't want you to feel like they weren't for you. Of course, you can download the main flyer on the toolkit, but want to make sure you have these. So speaking of sharing, you know, most of you, if not all of you, are on social media. Plan RVA is on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And so we have some data. You know, there's a nice report in one of our tools that we use that looks at our engagement and our likes and our reaches and our reshares. So resharing is a great thing to do when you, like to Tony's point, from Span Center, that, you know, it's hard to know exactly how to maybe craft some of the language. Well, you don't always have to do that. If you are following us, which we hope everyone in the room and everyone listening and everyone online is doing, you're following us on those platforms. If you're on them, you would see this example of a graphic coming across and you just hit the share and you could reshare that in your network. And we have data. So we actually, from Q1 of fiscal year 2020, we've gone down 27.8% on our reshares. And I know that we all love data. I love it. It helps us make decisions and know that we have either a success or a problem or an opportunity. So I would encourage you to if you can, set a goal of, you know, I'm going to make sure I'm following Plan RVA because they already have the language and the graphics, and I'll just reshare in my network. So again, on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Okay, any questions you can ask me over there, and I'll have more of these flyers for you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the toolkit or what's happening on the engagement site?
I would say that it's a beautiful site, and I'm really excited about the materials being provided. So thank you, and thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Is this a proprietary site? The where I'm going is that, you know, we're looking at the broad regional piece, but just wondering if this site can be shared like Ashland has an Ashland Town website. That I don't know how much you're involved in that. But it would be great if there could be a workshop or something said at town council meeting, and I'll see, we both have connections with council members. Say something about it, but it would also be nice for it to be on that website that people in Ashland or the Ashland community could fill it out, because it's such a great piece of hardware that it needs to get out there a lot.
So we communicate regularly with the local government staff who have responsibility around public information. So Martha Miller is oftentimes the person that we interact with.
Got her name down.
On this. I think you know, each jurisdiction handles things like that differently, but we're always interested in the same ask of sharing social media content, but also if the jurisdictions are willing to feature links to this from their from their local site, then that's a great opportunity for us. The Public Information Officers Network is one that we tap into regularly to help spread the word on things because our followership is less frankly than it is for the localities. So we have a point of contact in each of the 9 jurisdictions that we push things to regularly. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this site that Holly's just walked you through is actually a proprietary platform. It's a subscription that we have invested in as an agency. It's a product called Social Pinpoint. And it was part of our work plan this year to do that, to make that investment, to really be able to lean into the deployment of digital media, knowing that the internet is not the only way, and certainly the internet access is a barrier for some in our region. But as you can tell, it is a great way to be able to give more people flexibility and freedom to input when and how they would like to. And then Kristen reminded me last week on our public outreach committee call for the commission that even when we do hands-on activities where people might be drawing on paper maps, we're coming back and entering that into this so that we have that complete database of everything that we've accessed. So it's a great way on the back end to manage this input and be able to dispense it the way that Holly described. But this tool was something that we intentionally invested in this year as part of enhancing our public outreach efforts. And it is not specific to transportation. So this same
Platform.
array of tools are available for the work that we do across all of the program areas at Player and RVA now, which we're really very excited about.
Great. If there's no more immediate questions, I think we're just gonna bounce back over to Martha.
Me? Okay. Just quickly, thank you guys so much. I know that several of you, Mr. Williams, Mr. Bunn, Ms. Powers, Mr. Moore, all of you volunteered, as well as Reverend Hathaway, who's here today, as well as Ms. Schneider from Chesterfield and Mr. George from Richmond, who also sit on our commission's public outreach committee. So the 7 of you, if I have that correctly, are going to be serving on that equity work group that's convening next Friday at 11:30 for the first meeting. And Ken has been doing just a yeoman's job of doing research to be able to bring some initial material to that committee and for us to be able to set out the work plan. Again, just as a reminder, I think Chair Bunn kind of announced the charge for this joint committee, this work group, but we'll be focusing first on thinking about the loose term compensation for how we think about incentivizing participation and in our public participation process. And then, of course, as this committee moves through its work plan for the year, review and update of the Title VI plan. And I think even through the research and the phone conversations that Ken's been doing, I've been able to be a part of some of them. We're learning even more. So I think we're going to have even more material to bring to this committee to feedback recommendations to the full CTAC and so on through to the policy board. So that group meets next Friday for the first time to kick off the working group. Yes.
Friday the 31st.
Yes, that's right. At 11:30 here. And we will provide lunch. Just make sure we know that you're coming so we can make sure we have enough. But yeah, thank you for volunteering to serve.
Bounce back to you.
Back to me at the symposium.
Back and forth.
Okay, so the next thing we have for you is how can you have an exciting and fabulous and important role in our Pathways to the Future Regional Symposium on Pi Day, which is 3.14, March 14th, 2025. It is a Friday. So this is our invitation to the public to come and learn about regional cooperation and see about all the ways they can see themselves in this work that we do and get interconnected to all the different spheres, right? Transportation is just one of our spheres, but we have a lot of different spheres of work that we're helping to build infrastructure on. And so the symposium will be on Friday the 14th from 9:45 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The invitation will be ready to go next week on January 23rd, which is National Pi Day, P-I-E Day. So we're going to announce our PI Math Pi Day on Eating Pi Day next week. And so that material will be ready next Thursday. Is that the 23rd? Next Thursday for everyone to share. So I don't have anything to give you yet, other than to say, this is the time, 9:45 to 2:30 on that Friday. We're going to have essentially 2 programs, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. and lunch will be provided for folks. And what we would like CTAC to do is to help us lead and run the activities we will do in both sessions. So you're invited to come all day. We'll ask you to register if you're available. But where we would love your help is there's 2 activities that we're gonna get people up and moving to contribute their public input, both to the long-range transportation plan, but also to a near miss dashboard. And so the near miss dashboard is something we haven't really talked about, and I will give you my very small understanding of it, which is exactly as Andrew demoed for us this morning, all the times where he was a little bit in danger and did not get hit, he did not get hit by anything, it was a near miss, right? So there was a safety issue at a specific place where we're not recording that because there's nothing to record if it doesn't actually happen. So that's the purpose of having a near miss dashboard, which our transportation and data teams are working on, to be able to have people say, oh gosh, let me mark all the places where there might be a safety issue, right? Back to our conversation. So we will have a tool that we'll be ready to share with the public then about that. And so a little bit of the help we would need from CTAC is helping people actually play with the tool. So we're actually inviting everybody to come to the symposium with their devices, so phones, tablets, computers. But for those who don't have them, we will have some available, and we would also ask if you don't mind bringing your own device for any folks that might not have access. So I will have more details on how you might do that. But if that's something you're interested in, will you let me know either today or sometime this week if you're like, hey, I'd really like to help with some of the activities on that day? And we'll obviously give you some more instruction because we're not going to meet before the symposium date. But that's the morning activity. And then the afternoon activity, we'll actually do something a little bit bigger than transportation. The next big thing that we have going on is about CEDS. You might have seen this acronym, CEDS. It's the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And it is a strategy that is for the whole regions, identifying the strengths and weaknesses, setting goals for growth, and what are the steps to get there for a whole different slew of activities that we might do. Transportation is one of them, but it also includes things like jobs, housing, infrastructure, education. So that's a bigger kind of regional plan that we're working on, but what we're gonna actually ask the attendees at the symposium to do is to help us identify some of those strengths and opportunities for the region. And so there'll be an activity for that as well that we could use your help with, again, directing folks, answering questions, helping people with technology and filling out. And so that would be the afternoon. So if you can't come for the whole day and you can come for part, I'd love your help. We probably don't need every single person, but also you were welcome as a caring participant of the world and our work to sign up for that. But we'll have registration open next Thursday.
Venue will be where?
Oh, yes, very, very, very likely at the convention center. We are locking that down right now. So I would say very probably, but I don't have a contract in hand just yet.
Will you be serving pie?
Hopefully, yes. We're trying to get Airmark as their provider, so we have to use them, but we're like, what kinds of things are pie? Savory pizza pie, hand pies, dessert pie, quiche, empanadas, like what are the ways we can have pie? Yeah, there's gonna be some fun pie theming and other activities as well. So there will be some fun too, in addition to that, yeah. Good question. So get excited, but tell your friends next week, so I'll have something to actually share then. So we'll have, again, some images to share, some posts that you can share, and then a registration link. And the Chamber RVA is so graciously offered to help us with some of the day of logistics and registration. So they'll be hosting our registration on their site for us. I think that's it.
Wonderful. All right, I don't see a speaker on agency updates. Who are we gonna go to for that?
I think they're just
Those are
inserted.
handed out.
Oh, okay,
They
that's
have- yeah,
just
There's
on
no
the
speaker, they're just
page.
informational for you to read over and kind of make you aware of what the meetings have been about and what the upcoming ones will be about.
Fantastic. And then we've got the newsletter linked. All right, then we can move on to member comments. Did anybody have anything additional they wanted to add or further comments on things we've talked about? We have a little bit of time in the meeting, so if people want to flesh out any thoughts that were shared before, they're welcome to.
I wanted to ask, Andy, Vision Zero role and the city role in the legislation, like, do y'all play a part in that? I know the city has a goal, but how are we working with, those bills? I don't know, that's just a thought. And then also too, I was just thinking, I just wanted your feedback on, like, how New York put that congestion situation happening, the fine, and your thoughts on this $100 fine that's coming through the General Assembly possibly.
So I don't, I haven't been following the bill. There are folks that spend a lot of time tracking what's going on with legislation. One thing that remind me, I didn't wanna chime in earlier, on your agenda, but one issue that is a statewide issue where we're handcuffed, pardon the pun, is with enforcement. So automated enforcement that you mentioned before. It's incredible how many people are speeding past elementary school kids when they're coming in and out of school, like just in the morning hours and the afternoon hours. So as locals are hearing about the effectiveness of like ticket cometh out, you go, "Phew, that's steeper than I thought," and you don't do it again. People are saying, well, why can't you put these everywhere? Like, why not around DCU? Why not at the high schools now? Why not here? Why not here? Why not here? They are very effective, and we know a lot of places on the high entry network where they would probably help to change behavior, but we can only put so many based on population, based on time of day, based on a bunch of things. So it's one of those things where people will come to the city and say, you're not doing enough, and we go, please talk to your legislatures, please go across the street and you're outside of that building, even like talk to lobbyists about these kinds of things and tell them the problem. I lost myself on your first question. It was, I guess your first one was just what are we doing as far as legislation goes?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, and
the city
Vision Zero.
has a mission, but.
Vision Zero is one where Richmond's in a good spot in that we've been at this for so long. In 2017 was when Vision Zero officially started. And again, to your point about like, are we aiming for a plateau? No, we're aiming for 0 severe crashes. We know there will be mistakes and there will be bumps, but we want them to be bumps, not life-altering crashes. So I think that kind of thing, our role is anytime we have the chance to talk boldly like that, then we absolutely want to. And so other cities around the country have been coming to Richmond virtually and in person to say, how do you talk about this stuff? How do you make change happen? But the state level, things like automated enforcement, that's one that really stands out. Another one would be in-vehicle braking. So this is a technology that's been around for a long time, where based on where your vehicle is or the surroundings, it will automatically brake. So and you're seeing this now with autonomous vehicle technology, but this is even separate from AVs, where if I'm in a school zone, like my car will only go 25 miles an hour. I can't speed. But that's such a hot topic because I mean people will divert and say, well, privacy. Okay, well, so this is what the politician point of view is. Well, maybe we'll say if you're going 100 miles an hour, then after your conviction, you will have to get this as a consequence. Well, at least that's a starting point, but it's kind of crazy, 100 miles an hour before you get the in-vehicle braking assistance. So those vehicle type issues, I think, are important to talk about with politicians and lobbyists and those types. And then also the enforcement.
Cool, thank you. I actually have a question for you too. I wanted to bring up when you were talking about messaging, what flashed in my mind, and maybe some people here have seen it, but there's at least one billboard has pictures of ducks on it, and the messaging is, you are not a duck, drivers stop for ducks.
It's on
and
Broad Street at Scott's Addition, I know.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's from DMV, like I looked it up and I just thought that that's kind of the exact messaging that you were saying is, it's much more, kind of skirts the driver's responsibility for being the one operating this massive vehicle and puts more onus on pedestrians. So I wondered about that, like just to bring that into this room, but also, do we have any, like, are you able to reach out to DMV and be like, hey,
So
about this messaging?
Stephanie is not a plant. But I'm happy to tell you that we are actively engaged with DMV on a couple of exciting projects. They've got their own money that they fund some marketing efforts with, and they reach out. And then there's some other things that just we talked about this. In fact, just yesterday we were talking with them about some of these things. It's the Department of Motor Vehicles, right? So on the one hand, if I'm bike ped guy, you would think, are you and DMV really on the same page? And a lot of times, no, we are not. But in some ways, and this is one of those topics, Vision Zero, we are. And so they have been reaching out to marketing agencies, and they have one that's right now developing some campaigns. I'm not gonna share the stuff that they're working on right now, but because I think their reveal will be a lot of fun. But they are working on some stuff. So they need, just like engineers and planners, they need creatives from the outside to help them, but they need a starting point of going, what's the issue? So, for example, physics, like falling off a ladder, this is a big deal. So to help the creatives go, oh, that's the problem. It's speed and speed reduction and these things that happen to the human body. And then the other thing that you asked me about, just where you put people's attention. We don't want to be known as, or even see, I don't want to see a campaign where you're like, well, if you expect to walk safely from here to the restaurant, you need to have a day glow jacket and be waving a flag and bells on your shoes and all these kinds of things. No, you should, however you are right now from this meeting, be able to safely walk from here to the restaurant. The typical kind of state DOT sort of campaign is gonna be, well, how much bling was he wearing? He should have been shinier when he was walking. Like, why didn't Andy wear a brighter hat? We don't want any of that. We don't want part of that. We want to draw attention to the source of danger and the people causing this danger. It kind of shocks the system. Hey, here's what's going on. I think one thing that helps, and we're not gonna be able to show this kind of stuff, but there's a lot of dash cam videos nowadays. YouTube's full of channels of dash cam videos that document terrible driver behavior. And it's the kind of thing like, my parents used to tell me about when I was doing driver's ed and just the awful movie clips that they would be shown that has a lasting impact. I don't want people to have to watch awful crashes. Also, part of me wonders if right up until the point, if that is the kind of thing, without the graphic stuff, if people need to see more of that, if you only take your eyes off the road for a second, here's how far you go. I went half a football field, I had no idea I could go that far just by glancing off. So I'm feeling myself meander, so I'll stop.
I will say real quick, since you're still here, Andy, if you're willing to make this a little bit of a displaced Q&A, that is totally fine with me. We can ask for if anybody else has more questions. I don't know if that's something that you have time for, and I don't want to assume that you do.
Got probably 2 questions.
Do we
Before I
have
gotta hop
two
on the
more
rapid transit.
questions?
It's not a question, but just Faith, the city council adopted the 2025 legislative priorities in November, and most of the other localities in our region adopted some version of a legislative set of priorities right before the end of the calendar year. So I can tell you for the city, they do have as part of their legislative agenda, a whole section on transportation, and included there is,
It's one, you just gotta.
the legislation, I'm sorry, I just lost my place in the document, but the legislation supporting the speed cameras in university areas, just like Andy mentioned. And then there are also a number of other points that are focused on safer communities. Let's see. Authority to use speed cameras in designated children's daycare programs and to expand the hours of speed cameras may be used in school zones. Additional resources to support multimodal transportation options. Continue to fund infrastructure. So there's a number of different things in that transportation section of their legislative priorities. And again, each of the jurisdictions do have typically some set of things that they've agreed they will be actively advocating for, in addition to responding to whatever bills get introduced over the course of the session.
And this, in the context of that, the sort of thing that a group like this can do, and then even in each of your networks, even if you're not lobbying yourselves or you're not taking a particular stance like I'm pro this or anti that, whatever the bill happens to be, just helping with the messaging around these topics, because something like automated enforcement, it's gonna end up in the weeds of, well, who manages the camera? Is it a private company? How many companies do that? Well, what will the fine be? Will it be this? Well, what about people that can't afford $75? Like, it gets sucked into those details so fast that people lose sight of the big picture of kids are coming out of school, and this many people in Richmond alone, in 1 month, were going 20 miles an hour faster, 25 miles an hour. Like, we have all the data, RPD has that data. So having people on that higher level, here's the message, here's the point, like, don't get lost when you're, these are important details about how a system works, but big picture, why is this important? Why does the in-vehicle kind of safety stuff matter? Why, how does this stuff work towards multimodal transportation? It's that higher level stuff that you all and then your network can absolutely help with.
I have a quick question, coming from the engineering world, when we talk about Vision Zero, you start with the sort of core premise of no death is acceptable, and a lot of times the other phrasing of that is all deaths are preventable. And the immediate refrain that you get when you say that, as I'm sure you know, is, well, not all deaths are preventable. Like, some people are drunk driving and some people are watching. Exactly. So I'm wondering what your response to the idea that infrastructure and stuff, you touched on it a bit, but what a more conversational approach to that is. I understand the broader approach of like,
Yeah.
you have to have all these different facets of Vision Zero, but in a conversational setting, when you hear not all deaths are preventable, like sometimes people are just doing things that are gonna get them killed. What is your approach to that?
So I was just, well, you guys were on another agenda topic. I was just talking with somebody about this. Be Socrates, or have somebody in your network be Socrates. Ask questions, like, well, be specific. So, well, even like what you said about zero, is zero really, is that right? Okay, like, just talk about your family. In your family, how many would be acceptable? And then you'll have a joke like, well, there's that one cousin of mine. But focus on, get people to talk in specifics, because when they do that, they're forced to confront behavior, the root behavior kind of stuff. So years ago, one of the common oppositions to roundabouts, for example, safest form of at-grade intersection for everybody that cares about intersection design, was, well, what about drunk drivers, because they'll plow into a roundabout? Okay, so don't call it a roundabout, call it a drunk driving catcher. Like, you don't want that drunk driver hitting, T-boning somebody else and killing them.
Yeah.
You just saved a life. So, but all these ideas, I think if the more you get people, you ask questions back and you get the other person skeptic, like, be a skeptic, that's good. But then as they get more and more specific, you'll get probably to something that either, well, you know, what if you have to be looking at your phone while you're driving? Or, well, you just accidentally were going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. You get to these things that are the core, like speed is the fundamental cause behind severe crashes. So if you get people talking about these things, you're gonna end up ending with saying speed or doing something dumb that you shouldn't have been doing. It's gonna be behavior stuff. It's not gonna be, well, how yellow is Andy's bright jacket? It's just not. So I think just that, keeping in mind kind of Socratic method sort of stuff. And if you're unfamiliar with it, just look that up and try it. Like, just ask questions. And it's incredible where conversation, how you both get good information out of people, and it softens it, because it's not so adversarial where, like, well, Richard's always pro-bus. Why can't he be more pro-bike? I mean, you take away that adversarial relationship if you just start asking questions, and then it's more like, oh, this is interesting. We are on a quest together. Quests are fun. Who doesn't like a quest? We're gonna find out how to get to 0 deaths.
Great. I think we're gonna wrap it there. Thank you so much for sticking around and answering a couple more questions.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Next meeting is March 20th at noon as always. All right, good to- thank you. And we'll go ahead and wrap things.